Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe. Jaya Yashomati Nandan Damodara, Jaya Yashomati Nandan Damodara. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रविजकाचार्य अष्टोत्र शत श्री श्रीमद् अभय चरणारविंद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रविजकाचार्य अष्टोत्र शत श्री श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet nashta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class on the auspicious day of Shri Sharad Purnima and at the onset of the Kartik Mas, the month that is very, very dear to Shishi Radha Damodar. So we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 21, verses 37 to 39. And today we will also try to reflect a little bit more on the beautiful Damodar Leela and the significance of Sharad Purnima as well as we go on. So let us look at text 37. Tasmin Sudanvan Ahani Bhagavan Yat Samadishat Upayad Ashrama Padam Mune Shanta Vratasya Tat Tasmin Sudanvanahani Bhagavan Yat Samadishat Upayad Ashrama Padam Mune Shanta Vratasya Tat Tasmin Sudanvan Ahani Bhagavan Yat Samadishat Upayad Ashrama Padam Mune Shanta Vratasya Tat Tasmin Sudanvan Ahani Bhagavan Yat Samadishat Upayad Ashrama Padam Mune Shanta Vratasya Tat Tasmin Sudanvan Ahani
Bhagavan Yat
Shanta Vratasya Tat. The word-to-word translation. Tasmin, on that. Sudhanvan, O great bowman Vidura. Ahani, on the day. Bhagavan, the Lord. Yat, which. Samadishat, foretold. Upayat, he reached. Ashrama Padam, the holy hermitage. Mune, of the sage. Shanta, completed. Vratasya, whose vows of austerity. Tat, that. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. O Vidura, they reached the hermitage of the sage who had just completed his vows of austerity on the very day foretold by the Lord. So there's no purport. We'll go to the next verse, text 38 and 39. Yasmin bhagavato netran nyapatan ashrubindavaha kripaya samparitasya prapanerpitaya brisham tadvai bindusaro nama saraswatya pariplutam punyam shivamrita jalam maharshi ganasevitam. We'll hear the translation. The holy lake Bindu Sarovara, flooded by the waters of the river Saraswati, was resorted to by hosts of eminent sages. Its holy water was not only auspicious, but as sweet as nectar. It was called Bindu Sarovara because drops of tears had fallen there from the eyes of the Lord, who was overwhelmed by extreme compassion for the sage who had sought his protection. Purport. Kardama underwent austerities to gain the causeless mercy of the Lord, and when the Lord arrived there, he was so compassionate that in pleasure he shed tears, which became Bindu Sarovara. Bindu Sarovara, therefore, is worshipped by great sages and learned scholars because, according to the philosophy of the Absolute Truth, the Lord and the tears from his eyes are not different. Just as drops of perspiration which fell from the toe of the Lord became the sacred Ganges, so teardrops from the transcendental eyes of the Lord became Bindu Sarovara. Both are transcendental entities and are worshipped by great sages and scholars. The water of Bindu Sarovara is described here as Shivamrita Jala. Shiva means curing. Anyone who drinks the water of Bindu Sarovara is cured of all material diseases. Similarly, anyone who takes his bath in the Ganges also is relieved of all material diseases. These claims are accepted by great scholars and authorities and are still being acted upon even in this fallen age of Kali. Jai. Bhaktivedanta Purports Ki Jai. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhuter Mahadbir Yaima Puro Vibhu Nirmaya Shete Yadamoshu Purusha Bhunkter Gunamsho Dashashoda Satmaka Solang Krashishta Bhagavan Vachamsi Me Shri Krishna Sharanam Sharanagatam Katha Amritam Satatapibatam Bhakti Vedanta Marga Panktanam Sarvalokarishi Deva Janna Prasannam Sarvalokarishi Deva Janna Prasannam. Hare Krishna. So welcome again to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So with the blessings of Shishi Radha Gopinath, Shishi Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Marani, Shishi Gaur Nitai, Srila Prabhupada, and all my gurus, I wish to offer my humble obeisances, and let us begin to hear and speak from Srimad Bhagavatam. So we have been hearing this beautiful Leela where Maitreya Muni is having a conversation with Vidura, and Vidura is asking different questions, and Vidura is asking about the descendants of the Swayambhuva Manu. That is, and then we hear about Swayambhuva Manu's two sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapada, and his three daughters, Akuti, Prasuti and Devahuti. So now Maitreya Muni begins to speak about the pastime of Devahuti and Kardama Muni. So we hear how Kardama Muni, following the instruction of Lord Brahma, he does a penance for 10,000 years. So Lord Brahma instructed Kardama Muni to beget children, to increase the progeny. So what did Kardama Muni do? Straight away, he just didn't get into the act of doing that. But he did a penance for 10,000 years of austerity. And that is what is important in today's verse as well, because it is this austerity of Kardama Muni that attracted the Supreme Lord. And he gained the mercy of the Supreme Lord to the extent that the Lord shed tears on seeing Kardama Muni. So Kardama Muni, after 10,000 years of penance, he had the darshan of Lord Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu appeared before him so beautifully, holding Shankha Chakra Gada and a beautiful white lily in his hand, wearing a crown, wearing beautiful jewelry and shining beautifully. He appeared before Kardama Muni, and then as soon as Kardama Muni saw him, he began to offer beautiful prayers. He offered Dandavat Pranams and he offered his prayers. And then he expressed his desire. He expressed his wish to the Supreme Lord, saying that he really wished to marry a girl who is of a similar disposition, just like him, so that he can then fulfill his desires and then he can beget children. And at that time, Lord Vishnu, looking at Kardama Muni, he spoke very sweetly. And as the Lord was speaking, his eyebrows were moving very gracefully. So like that, with a smiling glance, the Lord spoke to Kardama Muni. And he said, I know already what is in your heart. So the Lord resides in our heart as our Paramatma, as the Super Soul. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. So he knows all our desires. We don't even have to say them. We don't even have to speak about it to the Lord, but the Lord already knows what is in our heart. So Lord Vishnu told Kardama Muni, don't worry. I know what your desire is, and accordingly I have arranged everything. So, day after tomorrow, Swayambhuva Manu will arrive here along with his wife Shatarupa and his beautiful daughter Devahuti, and he will give her hand in marriage to you. So after saying this, the Lord, who was seated on his Garuda, he just went back to Vaikunta. And then Kardama Muni was waiting. He was waiting patiently in his hermitage near the lake of Bindu Sarovara, that is on the banks of river Saraswati. So that is what we were also hearing yesterday, that Kardama Muni was waiting with hope. He had that hope and he had that faith that the Lord will somehow fulfill his desire. We see many exalted devotees who have waited patiently for the Lord, having complete faith on the Lord that he is protecting them, that he is giving his shelter. We see Shabari, Mother Shabari, who was waiting eagerly to take darshan of Lord Ram. So she did not lose hope. For years together, following the instruction of her Guru, Matanga Rishi, she waited. And then the Lord Ram, appeared before her. And then Rukmini Devi, who wrote a beautiful letter to Sri Krishna expressing her desire to marry him. And she had faith. She had that confidence that Krishna will somehow come and get her. She did not lose hope. Similarly, we see that Kardama Muni was waiting. And at that time, what happened? Swayambhuva Manu, along with his wife Shatarupa, they went on a chariot. He took his daughter Devahuti and they went on a chariot and they arrived at the hermitage of Kardama Muni. And then that brings us to today's verse, where we see that just when Kardama Muni had completed his vows of austerity on the very day foretold by the Lord. So the Lord said, day after tomorrow. And exactly on that day, Swayambhuva Manu arrived. And then in the next verses, we see the beautiful description of Bindu Sarovara, the beautiful lake. Now, why is it called Bindu Sarovara? Because the Lord, on seeing Kardama Muni, seeing his austerity, he became overwhelmed with compassion. And that is the most beautiful nature and the feature of Sri Krishna, his compassionate nature. So on seeing that Kardama Muni was completely surrendered to him and that he was seeking only his protection, on seeing that sincerity of Kardama Muni's heart, the Lord could not hold himself, but he shed tears, tears of joy. And those teardrops, because they fell on the waters of Saraswati, that lake gained the name of Bindu Sarovara. Bindu means drops, Sarovara, lake. So Bindu Sarovar. And this is we see a beautiful description of this lake in the next few verses. How there are beautiful flowering trees around this lake. And then there are animals, and then there are bumblebees, and then there are beautiful different varieties of flowers are blossoming. And it is a very, the breeze is blowing, and it is such a wonderful atmosphere. So in today's verse, we can focus on this aspect of the Lord's compassionate nature. So that is what attracts the Lord to the devotees, and also it is our devotion, it is our austerities, and it is our service attitude for Sri Krishna with all our heart, with our love, that attracts His mercy for us. And it is said that without the Lord's mercy, we cannot achieve anything. No matter what efforts we put into anything. Yes, our endeavors have to be there, but still, only when the Lord's mercy is there, only when the Lord's compassion is there for us, then we can achieve anything. Even for us to perform bhakti, for us to do devotional service, only with the mercy of Sri Krishna. And which is what we will also see in the beautiful Damodar Leela, of how our endeavor and then the Lord's mercy allowed Mother Yashoda to bind him with a rope. So, Lord Brahma says in one of his prayers, that is after the Brahma Vimohan Leela, he says, Atapite deva padambujadvaya prasadaleshanugriheeta evahi janati tattvam bhagavan mahimno nachanya eko pichiram vichinvan. So here Lord Brahma, after the Brahma Vimohan Leela, when he was, he got a little bit puffed up thinking that, who's this little boy? Is he really Krishna? And then when he realized that, yes, this is the Supreme Lord himself, he bowed down and he started offering beautiful prayers. And there he says that, my Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. That is only with that, even that little bit of mercy from Shri Radha Gopinath's lotus feet, then the Lord reveals himself to us, and we can see how beautiful, how compassionate, how glorious he is. And then Lord Brahma says, but those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. So no matter whatever different paths we take up, we can study the Vedas, we can, the Upanishads, there are so many scriptural texts. And if we try to study everything on our own and we think, okay, I'm scholarly, I can, grasp all this on my own, it is impossible. Only with the mercy of Sri Krishna we can understand the absolute truth. Or at least we can try to understand the absolute truth. Because at any given point we can never fully understand who the Lord is. Even Lord Brahma couldn't understand, so what to speak of all of us. And it is only through devotional service that we can approach the Lord. Only through that the Lord gives us His mercy and He gives us an understanding about Him. So a couple of days back we were hearing about the path of Arohana and Avarohana. Isn't it? Arohana is going upwards. Even in music it is there. We say Arohana. Sa re ga ma pa da ni sa. It's going up. Then Avarohana. Sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. So Prabhuji was explaining how in the path where if we try to understand who the Lord is, trying to go up, it is impossible. Whereas when the knowledge descends to us from Sri Krishna, through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through Srila Prabhupada, through the Guru Parampara, through our Shiksha Gurus, when the knowledge, through the association of devotees, then when the knowledge reaches us, our heart, and then when our hearts get purified, then we can serve Krishna. So we see this, that it is said, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, that the Lord is known as Ajita. He is unconquerable. And no one can conquer the Supreme Lord. But yet, by the pure bhakti, the loving devotional service from His devotees, what happens? The Lord comes under their control, out of His own will. So we cannot try to think, yes, I'm going to control Krishna. That never will ever happen. But Krishna, out of His sweet will, when He sees that a devotee is serving Him with utmost love and dedication and with patience and sincerity, then He allows Himself to be conquered and He reveals Himself to us. So we see that in the beautiful Damodar Leela, which we will come to in a minute. But before that, in trying to understand Krishna, so we see this beautiful Leela in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, where once when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he entered the Jagannath temple, he fainted. And then what happened? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he took him to his house. And then what happened? All the people, everyone came there to take darshan of the Lord. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he also distributed Mahaprasada to all the people there. And during this time, his brother-in-law, Gopinath Acharya, he was trying to tell him, this is Krishna himself. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is here in front of you, is Krishna himself. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he wouldn't believe that, because he was also, he was a believer of the Mayavad philosophy. He was an impersonalist. So he couldn't believe that this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and this is Krishna himself and that he has a form. So then what happens? Once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he hears about the Vedanta philosophy from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So being his teacher, so he begins to speak about the Vedanta philosophy. And then he speaks for a long time and then he asks. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is sitting very quietly. He doesn't say anything. He's just so silent. So then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asks him, what is this? You're sitting very quietly. Say something. Did you understand what I'm saying? And at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I can understand the principles of the Vedanta philosophy, but what I can't understand is what you are saying. Because he gave a different interpretation. So then they had a long discussion, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through all his skillful way of speaking and conveying the supreme tattva, he then explained, and then finally he convinced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And then later on what happened? The Lord revealed himself in his four-handed form, and then also as the beautiful Shyamasundara in his dark complexion as Sri Krishna. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he glorified Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he composed 100 verses in praise of him. So after seeing all this, Gopinath Acharya, he was really, just so surprised. A person who was an impersonalist has turned into a complete devotee of the Lord. How was this possible? And then when he said that to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu said, "It is because of your association. It is because you are a devotee. And because you being a devotee, through your association, he could, get that mercy." So we see how the Lord, only through his mercy that flows to us through the association of devotees, will allow us to serve the Lord, will allow us to then approach the Lord and to understand him. So that brings us to the beautiful Damodar Leela, where we see how Mother Yashoda, simply through her pure love, through her motherly affection for Sri Krishna, how she was able to conquer him. How the Lord became so merciful, and which is what we will celebrate throughout this Kartik month. So the prelude to this begins in the 8th chapter of the 10th canto, where once Krishna eats mud. And then all his friends, all the Gopas, they go and they complain to Mother Yashoda. Look at Krishna, he's been eating mud. And then Mother Yashoda, what does she do? She wants to see what did Krishna do. And then she asks him to open his mouth. And as soon as he opens his mouth, Mother Yashoda, she sees the whole universe, all the planetary systems, everything in creation, including herself, all the oceans, the mountains, the trees, everything. And then Mother Yashoda is like just astounded. She's like, "What is this? Is this my son?" And then she's almost fainting. And then she sees Krishna with that Aishwarya Bhav. For a moment, she begins to see that this is not my son. This must be someone really great. So then what happens? Immediately, Krishna, through his Yoga Maya, he covers her. Because he doesn't want Mother Yashoda to see her with that bhava. He feels, oh, this is my mother. I want to have this loving exchange with her. Why is she looking at me with so much respect? So then he immediately covers her with the Yoga Maya. And then Mother Yashoda, then she relaxes. And then she takes her baby little Krishna and she starts feeding him and she starts cajoling him. So after this, what happened? One day, when Mother Yashoda was churning yogurt to make nice butter for Krishna from the milk from the Padmagandha cows. The cows that ate the Padmagandha grass, which was very special. And everything was for the pleasure of Damodar. So Mother Yashoda was churning the yogurt, and then Krishna comes running and he stops her and he says that he wants to be fed. So then what does Mother Yashoda do? She takes Krishna on her lap and she starts feeding him. And then suddenly she smells there's a pot of milk on the stove. So she leaves Krishna down and she runs to attend to that. And then at this time, what does Krishna do? He gets a little bit angry and he breaks the pot of butter and he takes all the butter and he starts eating it and he distributes it to all his friends and the monkeys, and there's a whole mess of butter all over the place. And Krishna is walking on all this butter and he is just running around. So then when Mother Yashoda comes home and then she sees all this mess, who's done all this? She knows it's her naughty little son, Krishna. So with a stick in her hand, she is running, trying to catch Krishna. But she's running and then the malati flowers are falling from her hair. And then she's becoming really tired. And then finally she grabs Krishna. She catches him. So here we see Shukadev Goswami says, Evam sandarshita hyanga harina bhritya vashyata svavashenapi krishnena yasyedam seshwaram vashe. So Shukadev Goswami says, O Maharaj Parikshit, this whole universe with all the demigods, Lord Indra, Lord Brahma, everybody is under the control of the Supreme Lord. Yet, the Supreme Lord has one transcendental attribute, that he comes under the control of his devotees. And this was exhibited in this pastime. So then Mother Yashoda, she catches Krishna and now she's trying to tie him up with this wooden mortar. Why? Because she didn't want Krishna to run away into the forest. Again, it was her Krishna anxiety, as they call it. She was so anxious that he would run away into the jungle, or, the animals would attack him, the thieves would attack him, or, something will happen, some demons will come, or he's doing all these naughty activities. So she wanted to tie him up with a rope. And every time she was almost about to put a little knot, what happened? She couldn't. And then she tried, and she got so many ropes. And all the elderly gopis who were standing there and looking at this beautiful Leela happening in front of them, they were all just laughing. They were like, look at Krishna, what is he doing? And look at Mother Yashoda, she's trying to tie him up. So then finally, Krishna, with his merciful glance, when he saw that Mother Yashoda was completely exhausted. And that is what we see as well in our path of bhakti. It is not easy to attain Krishna. It is not easy to attain his service. We have to keep striving and trying hard, and be patient, have faith that Krishna will reciprocate with me. I am under his protection. I am under his shelter. I am under his loving affection. When we have that confidence, then Krishna reciprocates with us with his mercy. So then finally she was able to tie him up. And she was able to put a knot, which is what we see in the this beautiful altar. And we had the beautiful Damodar with Yashomati Nandan Damodar, who will be here again this evening. And throughout this Kartik month, we offer lamps for Shishi Radha Damodar. So it is said that in Vrindavana, everything is sweet. The parrots, the peacocks, the animals, the cows, the Brajavasis. Nothing is very powerful, or nothing is so magnificent. We don't see like huge armies or, like warriors. And if at all any demons came, then Krishna will just shoo them away. He will liberate them. So it is this sweetness of everyone's love that conquered Krishna. It is the sweetness of everyone's seva bhav that attracts Krishna. And Krishna always wants others to win. So whenever Sridhama and, would have a little fight, all the Gopa friends, Krishna would want Sridhama to win, and he would not win by himself. So like that way, he wanted to glorify Mother Yashoda. And that is what we also see in this pastime. That is, he wanted to glorify his dear devotee. So like that, even we can learn that, in anything in our services, we want others to do. Although sometimes we might feel, I want to do this for Krishna. But still, we let others to do it. And of course, it doesn't happen that easily. Sometimes, there are two things. We also need to take up services so that we can serve the Lord. But at the same time, we also allow and we let others serve the Lord. So our acharyas explain that in this pastime, there's something important that we can learn. That is, in a sadhaka's efforts, in a devotee's efforts to attract the mercy of Sri Krishna. So we saw that, today Bindu Sarovar, the Lord, whose teardrops on seeing Kardama Muni, his compassionate nature, how he really felt for Kardama Muni. That is one type of crying of the Lord. And then we see in Mother Yashoda's reciprocation here in this Leela, Krishna is crying out of fear of Mother Yashoda as a little child. So there he is crying again. And so we see that all these, Srila Prabhupada explains that the tears of Sri Krishna is not different from Krishna himself. Rudantam muhurnetra yugmam rajantam karamboja yugmena shatankanetram mohoshvasakam patrirekanka kanta Sthita graiva damodaram bhakti bhaddham. So Krishna is crying when Mother Yashoda is trying to tie him up. So all this, if we try to understand with our mundane perspective, with our materialistic vision, it is impossible to understand. So that is where we need Krishna's mercy. And we see that in our bhakti, there are 5 elements that are involved in this process of Swabhandhane. Swabhandhane is where Krishna allows himself to be conquered. That is, first is Shravan. That is, hearing the instructions of our gurus and then trying to following them. Then Samanvay. That is, after hearing these instructions, we try to harmonize our desires with the desire of the Lord. Now, sometimes that might be difficult because we all have our own different desires, and slowly, only with time, we can harmonize our desires with Sri Krishna's desire. So, even if that is difficult, what do? We do seva. So we keep doing our seva. Whatever service opportunities we get, we take it up. So that by service, then we can slowly harmonize our desires. Because by taking up different services, because when we cook, we want to cook for Krishna. We want to cook for Krishna's devotees. So then we are trying to please the Lord. We are trying to please the devotees. When we make garlands, we want to please the Lord. And then when we sing, we sing for the Lord's pleasure. When we speak for the Lord's pleasure. So slowly we are trying to harmonize our desires with the desires of the Lord. And then even when we are doing our seva, we may face various different challenges or difficulties. It is not always an easy path. Sometimes, some devotee might say something and then we might get upset, or, something is not going our way. So there are so many different challenges which come in different forms and shapes. So at that time, what do? Sahishnuta. We be tolerant. We have to tolerate whatever difficulties and challenges we face in our seva, in our path of bhakti. We just tolerate the difficulties, but we have the faith and hope that Krishna is there for me. He is looking after me. And then when we cross all this, then the fruit of that seva that we are offering the Lord is santosh. That is our blissful, satisfying experience of serving Krishna. So these 5 elements are Shravan, Samanvay, Seva, Sahishnuta and Santosh. So I was hearing this in one of the lectures given by His Grace Gauranga Das Prabhuji when he was describing about the Damodar Leela. And then all this then leads to smaranam. That is, then we get remembrance of Sri Krishna. And then who were the most ultimate devotees who were always remembering Krishna? The gopis. And then that leads us to the most beautiful, auspicious day that we are observing today, the Sharad Purnima. So it is said that among all the Purnimas, among all the full moons, the Sharad Purnima, the Purnima that falls during the autumn season, the Sharad season, that is the most beautiful Purnima, the full moon. So we see how on this beautiful day, Lord Krishna on the banks of the river Yamuna on the Keshi Ghat, he went to the Bamshi Vata. Vata means banyan, and Bamshi with his flute. So he went there and he stood under the tree and he started playing the flute. And the gopis who were so dear to Sri Krishna, who were always immersed in remembering him, who personify all this that we have been discussing today. Their love, which is so pure, which is what we are trying to imbibe slowly by following in their footsteps. So the gopis, on hearing Sri Krishna's flute, what did they do? They ran to the Bamshi Vata. So it is said that Krishna's flute is so mesmerizing that it attracts everyone. And when the gopis left their homes, it is said that their bodies were spiritual. So actually it is their material bodies just remained in their homes. So no one even knew that the gopis went. But their spiritual bodies went to meet with Krishna. And then when they all went there, what did Krishna do? He just told them, what is all this? All of you, you have come here in the middle of the night walking through the forest. Come on, go back home. It is not right for you to be doing this. And then the gopis, they were not really happy with this. They are very clever as well. So what did the gopis say? They tried to put forth their arguments, saying why they have come there to associate with Krishna, with love. And then Krishna finally, what did he do? He agreed, and then he began to dance with them beautifully, which is the beautiful Rasa Leela that happened on the night of Sharad Purnima. And then even as they were all dancing beautifully, then suddenly Krishna disappeared. Why? Because the gopis felt a little bit proud. Oh, Krishna is dancing with me. Because Krishna was dancing with each gopi. And each gopi felt that Krishna was only dancing with her. So this little pride came in their heart. And as soon as Krishna saw that, he disappeared. And then the gopis go searching, where is Krishna, where is Krishna? And then they see the footprints of this beautiful devotee who has walked along with Krishna. That is the footsteps of Srimati Radharani. And then they try to follow that path. And then even after that, Krishna also leaves Srimati Radharani because even she felt that, oh, Krishna is only with me. And then like this, finally what happens, Srimati Radharani and all the gopis, they keep searching, and then they come to the banks of the river Yamuna. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. We sing in the Shri Radha Madhava in the morning. So as the gopis went to the banks of Yamuna, and then Krishna came back to them again, and then they all danced again together very beautifully. So from all this, what we see is that Shri Krishna's pastimes, they are all completely spiritual, and they are on a platform that we cannot understand from our material vision. But then when we serve our gurus, when we serve Srila Prabhupada, when we serve devotees, and then we get an opportunity to glorify the Lord, and then the Lord becomes merciful towards us, and then through His mercy, then our life goes on somehow. But then how do we utilize our life? In serving Krishna. So which is what we saw in today's verse as well, that Kardama Muni, after 10,000 years of penance, he attracted the mercy of Sri Krishna, of the Supreme Lord, who came, and to the extent that he shed tears. So we will sing this little kirtan and we will complete our class for today. Vrindavana Ramya Sthana Dibya Chintamani Dama Ratana Mandira Manohara Abrita Kalindi Nire Rajahamsa Keli Kare Tahe Shobe Kanaka Kamala Tara